Welcome back. It's now late October, and I've turned my attention now to the buildings. So the first one I started on, I was going to do the Pirate's Den, and then I figured, let's try to 3D print the front of the roller coaster. So as you can see, these pieces here ended up looking pretty decent. They're replicas of the stone planters that were on either side of the entrance to the merry-go-round. And in the middle was the ticket booth for the merry-go-round, the roller coaster. In the middle was the ticket booth for the roller coaster. And this was all designed in the 1960s when the Collins family took over the park and they renamed the coaster the Mountain Flyer. This was a huge arch made out of homosote and plywood, and this originally had Mountain Flyer written down, up and down, and there, as you can see, this little piece at the top that was, actually this is backwards, it should be like this. There we go. This little piece at the top, the little crenellation on the top. And originally that was painted multicolors, and by 1980 it was just plain old white. There were all sorts of designs painted on this over the years, but for our purposes, for the 1980 look, it was essentially just yellow with blue top and underneath, and then a brown stripe down the middle and a brown stripe here, and that was it. Underneath this right here, this was all white with racing checkers on it, like a checkered flag. And the same thing in back here was the roof of the original station for the Mountain Wildcat. And when they built this huge arch to cover the fact that the roof was right here, they put a red fiberglass backing on here so you wouldn't see the roof line. And then the roof underneath was all that same checkerboard pattern all the way through. So the bulk of the building I'm going to build the same old way with the bamboo posts and then cardboard and the foam core board to support it. So that'll basically be it. But unlike normal buildings, which were just plain boxes, this was an open structure. So it's a box up to the floor around the track, and then there was a big open space, and then the roof on top of that. So a little bit of a challenge. But 3D printing this turned out to be really nice. It wasn't that difficult, and it's going to look nice. These bricks on here, the stonework was actually multicolored stone in the pastel colors of the park, the pinks, blues, yellows. So I'm going to gently brush these with lighter colors on the bricks, and that should look fine. So while I was working on this, I also turned my attention over to these. And these are the fences that were around some of the rides. This was the fencing that was around the flying jets. And this came out, this was real easy to do, and it came out fine. I'm just going to glue them down and glue them together and make a little circle around the flying jets. These were painted in the pastel colors of the park as well. Well, no, they weren't pastel. They were red frame and blue X's on here. So that won't be too hard to paint. And then these fences here were around the scrambler. And these were actually around various things. It was around parts of Kittyland, and they had them around the golf course. So this type of fencing was common around the park. But these came out fine too. And I got plenty of them, so I have enough to do most of what I need to do. I also decided while I was thinking about this, I never liked the look of the original Tempest cars, which are these right here. And the thing I don't like about them is this was one of the first pieces I 3D printed, and I still, at that point, didn't realize that what I had to do was bulk everything up in Blender, in the design program. So I printed this with very thin sides, and the printer at that time, my TiVo, couldn't handle it and just printed these filled in blocks of plastic. And, you know, these umbrellas came out okay, but this didn't look anything like the cab. And now that I know what I'm doing, I figured, you know, I really like the original look of the cabs with multicolors on them. This just didn't do it for me, considering everything else now is looking a bit better in the 3D printing department. So I redid them, and instead we have these. And I like these a lot more. They have the multicolored seats, the silver floor, and the little blue area up here. They took different colors from different cabs and put them on the railing at the top here. And then the little splashes of color on the sides. They were actually on here, they would have one of these signs of the same color as the cab, but it would say Tempest on it. And well, that was actually, Tempest was on the front door here, and then these would just be the same color, so a pink block, and they would light up at night. But I didn't bother doing that. I just put the little splashes of color there. But these are so much nicer than the original ones, as you can see. And now I'm just working on the umbrellas. I had to make new umbrellas because these things aren't going to be big enough when I break off this plastic here. So I just used bamboo skewers and my hot glue gun and made these. So they're pretty much the same thing. See if I can focus it. They now have an arch underneath, which the other ones didn't. They were filled in. So once I paint these, then I'll be able to glue them with hot glue into the center here, and then glue these back onto the structure. The structure was fine of the ride. So I'll glue these back onto the structure that's still on the model. And then the Tempest will actually look a lot better. Outside of that, I just got a lot of painting to do now. Not only painting those, but I got to paint this and that and that, and I got to paint the fences, and then I got to build the actual building for the Mountain Flyer. The new Tempest cars are in place, and that looks much better than the original ones. They actually came out a little larger than the original, but it looks good. Much more accurate. And then over here is the beginnings of the roller coaster station. And this is all one piece glued together. And I think what I'm going to do, I have the line right there of where it is on the midway, but if I put it right there, it doesn't leave much room to get through, and there was a lot more room there. So I think I'm going to push this back a little bit. I'm going to have to paint all of this gray anyway, because there were entrances on the pavement that went through here and then ramps that went up to the actual station. And I'm still debating on how I'm going to do the actual floor of the station. I may just stack some foam core board up, or I might do sides of foam core and then a floor across it. I'm debating how to do that, but that will come. And I also have to put in the transfer track here that held the spare coaster cars. So the transfer track will go in before I do any of this. And then that'll be ready to go. Well, a quick little update here. What I'm doing is taking out the track that was in the station because I decided to 3D print the station, the decking here. And that's going to come out nice, but rather than have to cut around in 3D printing, cut around this whole section, I just built the track trough into the model itself, so it'll just go right across. Also, I found that this transfer track that I thought was here was actually smack in the middle of the station in the back area. It was between the two brakes for the ride. So I got to get rid of these two. And I don't care about the holes here because this is just going to be glued down right on top of it. and I think that'll look a lot nicer. And what I did is I built in some holes into the corners of the decking, and I'm going to put bamboo skewers in there and then put a foam core board roof on top of that. And once I do that, the station will pretty much be done. So, coming along. How often do I have to say coming along? Of course it's coming along. That's why I'm making these videos. What's this? Well, another diversion. It turned out there was a comment on my YouTube channel by someone named LK Ta who mentioned to me that my scrambler was completely wrong. I had 4 struts coming off the center with 4 sets of cabs, and it only had 3. The original Eli Bridger, actually the one they still make today, the scrambler only has 3 sets of struts. So I completely redid that. I kept the cars and their little struts that are on there, but I had to rebuild the whole center thing. And that's much more accurate now. Makes much more sense. And while I'm doing that, down the midway, there it is. The coaster station is coming along. There's the 3D printed version. I love these striations here. That just is an accident because the whole thing is sloping, and that's the way the printer printed it, but it makes it look like wooden planks. And yeah, the base was gray. There's the transfer track area right there. Notice how I have this indentation where the track's going to go through, and here are the bamboo skewers. So I can do the foam core board top to it, and that'll be a simple matter. The edge of the foam core board I'll paint blue, which is the way it used to be. And it'll have shingles on the top. And I'm not going to do the racing checkers underneath because nobody's going to be able to see it. And notice I painted the sides. You can sort of see it here, yellow, which is the color it was. And I got the ramps in there going up and down. The ramps had chain link fence, green chain link fence going from floor to ceiling all the way up so people wouldn't cut lines. And I'm not sure if I can do that. I probably could with 3D printing, just print out some crosshatch patterns and glue them in there, paint them green. And then the only other thing will be over here, once the roof is in, I've got the side piece that goes in here. The side piece was the last remaining name of the ride, Mountain Flyer, with sort of racing stripes across it. So that I can 3D print and then glue in place once the roof is done. And then the coaster station will be done. And that will be one less building I have to deal with. Then I'll have 4 more. We'll have Out of This World, which is a biggie, the office section, Pirate's Den, and then the Dinosaur Den with the Chocolates game and the Kentucky Derby game. Well, we're back with an adjustment I'm going to make on the lift hill. I'm finally going to do this. It's just so crooked, and I've become increasingly picky. So you can see that very light thread that I placed there all the way along. What I'm going to do is I'm going to have to rip out each one of these and then refit it so that I get a nice straight lift going up, and that'll look a little better than the mess that's there now. If I want to lay some, track on here, it would look really awkward if the track was wobbling up and down all the way up the lift hill. Over the hills here, it doesn't really matter as much. It'll contour okay, but the lift hill should be really razor sharp straight. So that's my next plan of attack now, is to fix the lift hill. And the lift hill is straightened out. Looks much better. Still not perfect, but a heck of a lot better than it was. And now I just have to figure out what I'm going to use to lay the track down. So when I get all the track laid out, which is going to be a bit of a chore, then I can run it right through here, through the station, and then I can put the train on the track, and then I can glue the top of the station down and the coaster will be finished. I figured it out. And it went back to good old 3D printing again. The track is simply pieces like this. Very simple to print, very simple to design. It was just a set of cubes that I laid together. So I made basically a train track, and it's very flexible. The straight pieces will just clip right in between. I made them so they fit snapped right in between there, and they'll contour to the whole profile of the coaster. These pieces here, I made special curved pieces that popped right in. These took a little while for that one and then the one coming out of the station, because I basically had to eyeball it while I built it to make sure I got the curve right. But then those pop right in. So it's a perfect solution. And the little coaster train will fit right on top of that. I'm going to decide to put the coaster train coming down the famous turnaround here, because there really isn't too much to see at this end of the park. So I figured I'd put the coaster train there instead of cluttering up over here. But yeah, this shouldn't take too long at all. And once I get all these pieces on, then I'll be able to put the side bracing on. Those are these pieces here that I created that held up the big sections of the coaster. And then I have to do the ribbon bracing, and that's going to be 3D printed as well, just very thin strips of white that'll go across here. The ribbon bracing went horizontally across here and also diagonally, and that gives the coaster its typical look. And then once I finish that, the coaster will be done. So a lot of progress there. It's only the end of January. A little bit of progress here. As you can see, most of the track is done already. There are still some problems. My cutting of the bents, these vertical pieces, was not that precise. So you have things like this where it doesn't really line up. And I'll either have to fix the bends or do something else. And bending it here was a problem. I was trying to use hot glue at first, and hot glue just melted the plastic right in half, so that was just too much. So I've just gone to using 3-in-1 glue to try to hold down the pieces, and hoping that friction just by pressing these pieces in will keep it in place. I've tried for the most part to use pieces that will be on the parabola here, just a single piece, and then stitch the pieces together when it gets down here, because it tends to look better rather than having a break right in the middle. This right here doesn't look too great right yet. I'm still trying. This is the last piece I have to put in, and it's just, as you can see, boing. It's not really, the pieces aren't long enough to make the whole route, and yet the small pieces I have to put in here aren't flexible enough to bend, so I'm still futzing around with that. But everything else is done. And I even have the little coaster cars in right there. So that's all done. And the next thing I'm probably going to turn my attention to, since my head is filled with 3-in-1 glue, is to finish off the roof here of the coaster station. Now, I have the roof here, and I mentioned that I had to put in those red fiberglass pieces. Well, I've printed them out right here. So all I've got to do is cut those, and I know how big they are, and trim them according to the size. But gluing it on here, I realized what I should have done is I should have glued those fiberglass pieces in underneath the roof first and then glued the roof on top of it so you wouldn't see the edge of the fiberglass. I don't want to wrap it around the edge of this because that blue is supposed to show. So what I'm probably going to do is just cut another piece of roofing and glue that on top of these pieces when I've cut them out and put them on here. Just glue them as a tab right on here and then glue the other roof on top of that. And then the roof will be done because the track in the station is all done. So that's ready to go. The coaster is just about finished. Track's almost done. I got a little cleanup I want to do on it. You know, I still don't like this sudden bend here from the hot glue, so I might redo that. And a couple other little transitions like this here I don't like. But in general, it's looking pretty nice. So I'll leave that to the details later on. But right now I want to finish off the roof. As you can see, I've got the fiberglass panels here, and I put that piece of roofing on there to hide the tabs. And what I did is I put little dots of black paint on the posts and then used that to mark the positions on here. And I was going to drill holes to set this into here, but what I discovered is that these are so far back it wouldn't really work. So I'm just going to put hot glue on there and glue this down. And then when it's glued down, well, before it's glued down, I'm going to go here and I'm going to take a pencil line and put it on here so I can outline where those arches are, and then cut these accordingly. And then I'll glue that in and the station will be done. And I have to watch out with my elbow because I just broke the flag on the top of the merry-go-round building. This is very fragile. Maybe I should make it out of rubber or spring or something, but that's always breaking off. I'll figure out something, maybe a metal post. Anyway, let's get to work. And there it is, completed. Not bad at all. And then if we walk around this side, there's actually a couple little bonus buildings I threw in that I'd forgotten existed. There was a maintenance shed for the roller coaster, which was located right here behind the transfer track. And there was also the motor house, which was right here. The chain went down through the motor house. That's where the motor was stored, and it would power the chain. So those two I built and put in there as well. So I do want to add the ribbon brace for the coaster, and I figured out an easy way to do that on the 3D printer. It won't take much at all to do that, and that will greatly improve this. But that will be a little finishing detail I'll get to in a little while. I think what I'm also going to do is for these, I'm just going to cut and cut, which I didn't want to do halfway up the hills, but that'll make a nice curve here. And I think I can blend the upslope and downslope of these a little easier than I can blend the bottom of each hill. So I'll play around with that some more, and I'll fine tune it. But for now, that's what I was setting out to do, is get most of the coaster complete with the little trains on there. And then I got to put the side bracing on, of course. But again, that I'm going to do after I get the ribbon bracing on. Then I can attach these, glue these right to the ribbon bracing. And there you have it. So what's going to be next? Let's roll the dice and figure out whether it's going to be Out of This World, or The Office, or The Pirate's Den, or The Dinosaur Den. Stay tuned.